Hey y'all, in today's business tip, we're going to be talking about the subject of renting versus buying equipment. And this doesn't necessarily apply to service businesses. A lot of other companies deal with this issue. Maybe you own property or you have facilities that need to be maintained. Maybe you subcontract that out. But if not, and you keep it in-house, there's always the question of, do we rent this equipment or do we go ahead and purchase it? I think if you're using something every day or every week at least, you should probably go ahead and buy it just so that you don't lose the time dealing with the rental process. But otherwise, there are some financial considerations. And I've seen several different equations over the years, but the one that I've seen the most said that, if you rent more than 6 times a year, you should consider buying. And, for larger pieces of equipment, I didn't really get the math to work out on that. Didn't really make sense to me, but it does for pieces of equipment of $1,000 and less. If you're using pressure washers or industrial buffers or anything like that, post hole diggers, if it's $1,000 or less and you use it relatively frequently, I would go ahead and buy that. I mean, just so that you don't deal with all the other inefficiencies that go along with equipment. But there are some issues that you're going to need to consider, and some of these issues may be deal breakers for you. For me, it wasn't a financial consideration. It was some other points, and we'll touch on those. But the number one issue that you need to consider whether you're renting or purchasing a piece of equipment is, do you have an operator that's qualified to run that equipment? Because we're talking about some serious liability issues and safety issues when you're wheeling around a 5 or 8 ton piece of equipment that's a track hoe or a backhoe or, mini excavators are about 3,500 pounds or so. You can really do some damage to property or vehicles that are in the vicinity or whatever if you don't know how to run that equipment properly. So that's the very first thing. Do you need to train somebody? Do you need to get somebody to come in and teach you how to do this? Normally, when you're renting a piece of equipment, they're going to give you a 5-minute kind of primer on how to run that, but I just don't think that's sufficient. Really, for these larger pieces of equipment, you need some serious experience to go out there and do it safely. But there's also some other issues that we need to talk about. Number one is maintenance. Okay, do you have somebody on staff that's going to take care of your equipment? If you're a larger company and you have several pieces of equipment, you're probably going to have the budget to have a crew member on staff who is a mechanic and who can keep these machines up and running for you so that you can be out there making your money with the equipment. But let's talk about insurance. Insurance is a pretty big deal, and you really should have liability insurance on your company that protects you and your guys and your company from liability issues, safety, hospitalization, all these different things that can happen out on a job site. You probably need a good $2 or $3 million policy on yourself. But when you rent a piece of equipment, whether it's a car or a trencher or an excavator or whatever, for the rental agency, that is an income producing piece of equipment. Okay, they're renting that out and that's their business model. They get paid for that. So there's a little bit more of an issue than just getting the equipment repaired. A lot of times your personal insurance, maybe your automobile insurance, if we're talking about a car rental or something, they may cover the replacement or the repair of that piece of equipment, but does it cover loss of income? Because if it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get a part in and they got to put it in the shop, fix it and all that, well, that could be 2 or 3 weeks worth of lost income for that rental company, and they may want to charge you for it. So that's one of the issues you need to solve. And so let's talk about some other things. How about storage room? Do you have a place to keep your equipment if you purchase it? It needs to be safe, I would rather my equipment be, out of the rain, in out of the elements. When you drive by these rental houses, though, they have all their big equipment just sitting out, on the lot unprotected, but I wouldn't treat my equipment that way. So make sure that you have a place to store it. See, for me, that was pretty much the deal breaker, is I didn't have room on my property. And really, I didn't want to go out there and pay for a rental building or a place in, when you go to these, the storage facilities, some of them have enclosed property with fences and cameras and all that. And you see people pull equipment in there and leave it. And so they're paying a monthly fee for that storage. So that's something that you have to equate in with all of your other financial calculations. Availability of this equipment is a big issue, and the speed of repair. And you have to kind of think this through on both ends with rental and owning. If it goes down, who's going to take care of it? If it's a rental company, you can generally just call them up and say, hey man, your stuff has failed, a track came off, either come out and help me out with it or come pick it up and bring me another piece of equipment. Some places will do that. Some places just kind of leave you on your own, so you really need to do your research on your rental. But also, it's a question that's valid for owning equipment. If something happens, how quick can you get that repaired and back on the road or back out in the field? And, when you purchase, you can if you have a piece of equipment that's in the shop, you can always go rent a similar piece of equipment if it's down, but that's additional cost and so forth. And we've really got one final thing to talk about here, and it's the issue of additional lines of work. Would owning a piece of equipment help you take on additional work? Could you do things that you wouldn't normally do but are requested by your customers if you had that piece of equipment? So, let's say that you owned a skid steer, and you had a trencher attachment, a bucket, a hole borer, all these different things. Maybe that's not in your core offering, but you could add those as add-ons to the service and make additional money if you had the equipment on hand. So those are some of the financial and physical considerations of renting versus buying. And now I'm not really given any tax, legal, financial advice that would be considered professional. I'm just giving you a list of issues that you need to discuss with your accountant, with your attorney, with your business manager or whoever's maintaining your budget. These are things that you need to ask. Okay. But there is tax considerations when you purchase or rent equipment. Now, you're always going to get a tax benefit, a deduction for rental or whatever, but there may be some additional things that you get, but that's something that you need to talk with your tax accountant about. Now, let's talk about each individual category and its advantages or disadvantages. Let's talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of renting equipment. Okay, some of the advantages are that, you may have some larger projects that are available to you because of the availability of some larger pieces of equipment. If you're familiar with running, different classes of equipment, you may be able to notch up some and do a larger project just because it's there available for you. And in fact, there's different sizes in each class of equipment that you can get. If, for instance, I was in the irrigation business for nearly a couple of decades, and we would rent a lot of trencher equipment, everything from small mini trenchers, which would go down about 12 inches, and a lot of times those are under self-power, so they're pretty tough to run. And then you had the medium size, the boxers, the dingoes, which may be a dedicated trencher, but it may also have some additional attachments for other jobs. And, maybe they had the large equipment if you needed to get a skid steer for a really large project. So you've kind of got that availability there. Another advantage is that you're not going to be performing any of the maintenance and repairs on that. If something happens, you can take it back to the rental shop. And also there is the possibility that you may have immediate replacement for a piece of equipment that has a problem. That really depends on the service company or the rental company that you're getting it from. They may not have the facilities to bring another piece of equipment out there to you, but you may be able to put it back on the trailer, run it over there and get another one, versus if it was, your piece of equipment. Now you've got to take it to the shop, and then maybe you still got to go get a rental to take care of it in the downtime. But, there's no storage. They're going to store it there for you. So I think those are some great advantages. There's some potential downsides to renting as well. When you go to rent, that equipment may not be available there for you. Okay. I mean, it may already be rented out, and not every rental company does reservations. It may be a first come, first served situation. And I've rented from a lot of companies that do that. And, if you're not the first guy there in the morning where the doors open, it may not work out great for you. And also there's going to be some time spent in the rental process. Okay, not only do you have to go over and pick it up, but you may have to stand in line. It's going to take them a while to fill out the paperwork and check the gas and the oil and crank it up. And they're going to give you a little standard 3 or 5 minute spiel on how to run the equipment and so forth. And you just make sure that you're competent with it, hopefully. As far as renting goes, I really liked renting, and it worked out well for me and my company. But owning has some advantages and disadvantages of its own. So when you're owning a piece of equipment, okay, the advantages are, it's always going to be on hand. I mean, unless it's in the shop, then it's going to be on hand. And you're going to become very, great with that equipment. You're going to be running it every day, become very familiar, know all of its options, how to handle it safely and properly. And there's a good chance that that piece of equipment may be better maintained if it's under your control. I've dealt with a lot of different rental companies in the past, and some companies really did great in maintaining their equipment, and other companies, it wasn't necessarily negligence, but maybe they were just so busy that as soon as a piece of equipment came in, it was rented right back out. And, maybe only once a month would they take it off the road to do some maintenance and some upkeep on it. So there's that, I think those are advantages of owning equipment. Now, there are quite a few downsides to it. Now, if you own, we've talked about a lot of these issues already. It's, it's storage. It's, storing your equipment securely. There is the maintenance of it. Do you have a qualified person to run maintenance on this, to change the oil, change the hydraulic fluid, make repairs, and so forth? And there's also the possibility that you're going to lose some time, some downtime for maintenance and repairs. Now, if you're great at managing your time and managing your crew's time, then that may not be an issue, that you're going to be scheduling your maintenance on rainy days or whenever you can't be in the field doing your job. But it definitely takes that. You really want to do that maintenance, required maintenance on equipment that you own. I've seen guys that went out and bought $15,000, $20,000 pieces of equipment and kept them in the wind 100% of the time. And then a year later, you see the equipment and it's trashed. Has no value. It's got problems for them. And even if they need to turn around and sell it, it's not going to have any value to it. So, hopefully as we've covered some of these issues of renting versus buying equipment, you kind of see some of the advantages and disadvantages. Some questions to ask of your tax people, of your bookkeepers or financial people or whatever. And there's going to help you make a decision on this. And it's different for everybody. Like I said, there's a number of different factors. You just need to play it out for yourself. And I hope bringing all these issues up has made you think about some things that you hadn't thought about before. Hopefully it'll help you out some.